Welcome back to another episode of Rock Boys Football. Tennessee heading on the road to Norman, Oklahoma in what is, I think, one of the most exciting college football games that we've seen throughout the 2024 season. Not only the storylines of Oklahoma playing their first SEC football game, not only the storylines of Josh Heupel making his return to Norman, Oklahoma. I think one of the fascinating conversations around this football game is we're going to see two of the most talented young quarterbacks in the country play the biggest games of their college football careers in terms of national media spotlight. Who's got the better quarterback heading into this matchup? And I think there's a little bit more nuance to this conversation than I think a lot of the national media will give credit for. I don't think it's unfair to say Nico has been the better quarterback throughout the first three games of the college football season, but there's a lot of other factors at play for both of these quarterbacks. Want to get into, one, who has the quarterback edge? Where do these quarterbacks excel? Where do these quarterbacks struggle? I think more importantly, what do both of these teams need to do to best support these young quarterbacks in this football game? Fired up to get into it. Now, before we do, and as always, let it fly in the comment section. We previewed this Tennessee Oklahoma game Sunday afternoon. It was an absolute battlefield in the comments section. I wouldn't want it any other way. The amount of support y'all have shown the boys as we've talked about this football game. Appreciate you guys more than y'all know. If y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. And without further ado, let's get into this one. Let's start with Jackson Arnold, who definitely hasn't looked as good as Nico coming into this football game. But again, I think there are kind of some stories at play here. One, I think Josh Heupel is a much better play caller than what Oklahoma has right now. You can tell Oklahoma is still kind of ironing out how they want this Sooners offense to look like. Versus Josh Heupel in Tennessee, like they have their identity. They have an extremely strong run game to work off. And so, yeah, Nico's numbers, Nico on the film has certainly looked better than Jackson Arnold. That being said, Jackson Arnold very talented. Oklahoma fans know that. Tennessee fans know that. Now you get into Jackson Arnold, and one of the things that I'm really looking for in this football game is a little bit more. I think consistency would be the word I would use in terms of pushing the ball down the field. You take a look at the numbers, only 2 of 13, a 15% completion percentage when going 20 plus yards down the field. Some of it's on Jackson Arnold, and I think Oklahoma fans certainly know that. I think some of it's on the pass protection, not letting those route trees develop down the field. But I think most importantly, and one of the biggest storylines in this football game is the return of wide receiver Nick Anderson. Oklahoma's wide receiver room was a wide receiver room that I was extremely high on heading into the 2024 year. The injuries, the lack of consistency outside of Deion Burks, it hasn't been great for Oklahoma. I think they're missing that down the field presence. And I think Nick Anderson was the wide receiver we always knew was going to give Oklahoma that down the field presence they're looking for, right? You go back to last year, almost 18 yards per reception for Nick Anderson last year. He is that vertical threat that I think Jackson Arnold is going to need to lean on in this football game. So I think the emergence of Nick Anderson coming back healthy, I think you could certainly see Jackson Arnold have a little bit more success working the ball down the field, where you look at some other guys, I think like Brennan Thompson would come to mind in terms of, hey, we all know Brennan Thompson can absolutely cook, but he's struggled dealing with some physicality at the line of scrimmage. He's struggled to create separation down the field. Nick Anderson doesn't really struggle all that much with some of that stuff. I think, secondly, Jackson Arnold has been pretty dang solid when he's been blitzed on the year. I think the big question mark heading into this football game is Tennessee going to need to even rely on the blitz to get to Jackson Arnold, excuse me, and make him uncomfortable in the pocket. I think the biggest storyline in this football game is what does this Oklahoma offensive line look like against a Tennessee front seven that I think's legit, especially when it comes to rushing the passer. It's not only James Pierce, it's guys on the inside. It's a guy like Joshua Josephs on the outside, on the other side. Can this Oklahoma offensive line hold up? That's probably the biggest question mark we have coming into this football game, specifically as it relates to Jackson Arnold having success in this game. And I think lastly, Oklahoma's got to do something in terms of winning on first and second down. Everybody wants to talk about Oklahoma being what, 30% on third downs throughout the first three games. That's 98th in the country. Yeah, third down execution has been a problem for Oklahoma. I think the bigger problem is the lack of success they've had on first and second down, most notably in the run game. Only 4.3 yards per carry. That's 60th in the country. You haven't exactly played juggernaut front sevens. How does Oklahoma stay on schedule in this football game? How does Oklahoma prevent Jackson Arnold from being in those third and long situations against the Tennessee pass rush that is going to want to get after him? That's the question I'm looking for. And it doesn't necessarily need to be running right at this Tennessee defense, because Tennessee's very good stopping the run, but can you get some swing passes? Can you get some stuff to the perimeter that gives you that kind of extension of the run game where you're 2nd and 5 or you're 3rd and 2, allowing Jackson Arnold to be, a little bit more comfortable in those down and distances? That's kind of the story of the game, right? Is this offensive line, has it put it together? We always said, right, as we talked about Oklahoma, the biggest conversation all season has been the offensive line. We said you got 3 games to figure it out before you host Tennessee. Well, we're hosting Tennessee in about 48 hours. And so I think the question mark is, has this Oklahoma offensive line come together for this football game? Flipping the sides, you look at Nico, the numbers have been better. The film has certainly been better. There's also been a lot of things around Nico that have been better as well. You look at this rushing attack, 7.1 yards per carry. That's number 3 in the country. Something that not enough people understand is that this has been a run-heavy offense for Tennessee. 66% of their offensive snaps have been rushes. Excuse me. I think part of that deals with game script. They've just been blowing teams out, specifically in the second half, so they've been sticking to the run game, but also they're averaging 7.1 yards per carry, so there's no reason to throw the football that much when you're pretty much running for a first down every time you're running the football. Biggest question mark in this game is this is by far the best front seven Tennessee has played. How good can this rushing attack be for Tennessee against Oklahoma on the road? By far the biggest question. I think, secondly, Nico's been quite good pushing the ball down the field. 4 of 11, 36% completion percentage. I think he has wide receivers that can work vertically down the field. I think a really intriguing conversation here is you look at Oklahoma, you look at the change in philosophy that we've seen on this Oklahoma defense thus far this year. They are significantly more aggressive with their safeties. They are asking their safeties to be a little bit more aggressive in terms of the middle of the field, jumping routes, getting their hands on footballs. I'm personally a massive fan of that. But when you do have your safeties playing as aggressive as guys like Billy Bowman have been, what does it look like when teams are going to try to push the ball down the field? We've seen Oklahoma give up some vertical plays throughout the first 3 weeks. I think Tennessee, can you capitalize on that? Can you keep the ball out of harm's way over the middle of the field where these safeties are clearly trying to get their hands on footballs? But I think more importantly, if these safeties are going to be super aggressive, can you win with Dante Thornton or Brew McCoy or Chris Brazzell working vertically down the field, hitting some of those explosive plays? I think that's a really exciting conversation that we have to look for as well. Now you get into what quarterback would you rather rock with? I think the answer would be Nico, but I think more importantly, the answer is this Tennessee offense, which I think has definitely a better run game, a better offensive line, and arguably better wide receivers. Although we'll find out that once Nick Anderson and Andrew Anthony kind of take the field for Oklahoma on Saturday night. This is by far the best defense that Tennessee's going to have played. It's going to be in Norman, Oklahoma. I can promise you it's going to be rocking at Oklahoma. This is going to be a really fun game, not only because it's a ranked SEC matchup, Oklahoma's first SEC matchup, Josh Heupel coming back to Norman. We're going to see 2 of the most talented quarterbacks in the game of college football go head to head. I'm most fired up for that. Would love to hear from you guys in the comment section. What offense would you rock with? What quarterback would you rock with? Appreciate y'all rocking with it. If you guys do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel, and we'll talk to y'all later.